record. Welcome to our first ever book club. And we have a couple of really brilliant people here. One who has read the book, another who doesn't quite have it yet. No big deal. In fact, I'm just gonna kind of just share my screen from Kindle as we go and kind of take a look at things. So my first thing that I wanted to just share, having looked at this, is I don't know if any of you has ever gone through the Landmark Forum or the EST training from way back in the day. But as I read this, it felt very clear to me that this man had been through this landmark education. I saw a lot of parallels with what they do at Landmark. So I didn't know if any of you had had that experience. Okay.
I've
Heard of it, but that's about it.
I talked to a lot of people that went through it. Yeah, uh, it was huge in the 70s. Well, Est was huge in the 70s,
Yeah.
and then Landmark took over. And because I've been in the leadership development business, a lot of my colleagues were attracted to it. I never was.
So
Mm.
I think some of the concepts of the landmark concepts are present here, and I feel like they're very accessible and so it just happened to be an observation. So I do want to keep our book clubs an hour so that everyone just starts to feel comfortable coming. And so in this first hour, we will take a look. Welcome, Cindy. She let me know that she wasn't going to necessarily be on screen or audio at the beginning, which I would rather you just come, and it's absolutely fine. So, as we look at kind of how the book club's going to go, is I'm going to go ahead and read parts of it out loud, and I have some things, some questions, and some things for us to discuss. I think you'll find that it's pretty interesting and goes pretty quickly. So where I'm going to start is in this little section on who I am and how I got here, which by the way, I almost never read those sections of a book. And everyone's got their own approach. But I really got excited at this very first little part of at this part of his self-introduction. He said, as the possibility I saw through coaching grew, so did my ambitions for its impact in the world and the clarity of my mission. Today, I am committed to a few seemingly impossible goals. One, to connect a coach to every founder in the world. So I know, Rex, you're being in leadership. Peggy, you're having been a founder. His idea is if we can support mindful leaders in creating positive cultures when they have 5 to 50 employees instead of just 500, which right now, yeah, the bigger organization leaders are often the only ones that have a coach. That's his first ambition. Secondly, for every coach in the world to be masterful at the craft, which I think is mostly why we are here. And then third, and this is his big, hairy, audacious goal, is a world in which every human has the skills of being a coach. Because as we move forward, I think we'll all see that his philosophies on coaching are philosophies on living sort of that big, hairy, audacious life. Which brings me to the little handout. I did attach it to the email. I don't know if anybody didn't get it. I'll go ahead and attach it here, and that's what I'll do in the book clubs is have a little handout like that. And so funny that there it is. So this is where I realized that I should have shared just my screen instead of the window. So let me just share my screen so I can go back and forth between Kindle and the handout. Oh, I just passed it. So kind of BHAG. I don't know if you're familiar with this idea of a big, hairy, audacious goal, but those things that he said kind of felt to me like a big, hairy, audacious goal. So that's the first thing I wanted to kind of talk to you all about is this it was in fashion for a while to talk a bit about a big, hairy, audacious goal. They call it other things now. But as I've gotten older, I know that sense of purpose, like why are we here, is something that you kind of have to keep re-upping on, or it's easy to kind of fall into kind of a complacent rut because you don't necessarily have to do the things that you used to have to do when you were actively doing something like raising a family or running a business. I have a friend right now who kind of lost everything, and she's literally coming to visit and stay with me for a few weeks because she literally has lost any sense of why would I want to be here anymore. And she's not saying it in like a sad, negative kind of way, but it really does. When I find those days when I'm just not motivated, I'm like, it's because I don't have a big, hairy, audacious goal, vision, possibility that I'm trying to create. So here's where I want to ask you, does anybody have kind of any insight on for you what that purpose might be, or any struggles with maybe finding purpose in a goal or whatever?
My big, hairy, audacious goal, business goal, is to have 200 leadership development specialists in the U.S. Enrolling 100 plus people per year into our leadership development process.
Wow, that's a good one. So how do you reach out to these people? Because I've you've never really reached out to my people. I'm happy to share that.
Yeah. Well, I've been in the industry for this is my 53rd year,
Sure.
and so I know a lot of people, and so a lot of people joined me early on just because of past relationships, and I've recruited, yeah, embarrassingly, one or two a year that I didn't know that from referrals from LinkedIn, miscellaneous places. But I need to step up my game. Realistically, I have 25 full-time active people, so I've got to do it by eight. I got to increase it by 8 times in the next 5 years. I've set a 5 year goal uh, to do that, and so I do need help. Actually, I need help finding someone to recruit for me. Um, that's not my that's not my sweet spot
Well,
yet.
it kind of is, though, in that you are able to recruit word of mouth, which is the same for me with my coach certification training. I don't ever advertise it, and yet I have classes all the time from word of mouth. And I think that's part of what comes from the big, hairy, audacious goal is if you have something that you really believe in and that you care about, it somehow attracts people naturally. Very interesting.
Yep.
Really good. Anybody else have any thoughts on that sort of compelling purpose, vision, possibility?
I don't have anything that big, Rex.
Well, those of you who have come to the marketing summit know one of my coaches is Kellen Flukiger, and he always talks about his he calls it something else, his PTAC, and he's writing a book on it now, but it's this kind of personal contract that he makes, and his goal was to reach 1 million people, and he reached it like much sooner than he thought he would. So then he had to raise the goal. And at first I was just like, a lot of people who were like, why do you have to be that ambitious? Well, it's not really about the what of the goal. It's the goal itself kind of moves you and gives you a purpose and gives you heart and gives you motivation and all those good things. So that's why I wanted to look at his. All right, continuing on then.
Gary,
Yes,
before you leave this
please.
section, two things
Yeah,
jumped off the pages at me in this who I am,
please.
how I got here. I love this phrase, particularly because I'm in the B2B market. He said the broken leadership styles operating in many organizations today, and he put broken leadership styles in italics. That's on page 3 of the paperback.
Huh?
And then the other thing was he said if we can support mindful leaders in creating positive cultures when they have 5 or 50 employees before they get so big that they become bureaucratic. I thought those two thoughts were powerful.
So that was part of his vision, and that's what I didn't read that you just did was the why of that part of the vision.
Right.
And I think we can all relate to that. A lot of people in my group are trainers who go out to these organizations. So thank you. And keep doing that if you see something, for sure. Love it. So I'm moving now into, unless there was something in between the actual section here on part one, the promise of coaching. He just kind of talks about, who this is for. He uses a really good analogy, I think, of coaching as a GPS, and just such a simple idea that basically says, the GPS. Imagine you're in your car ready to drive somewhere you've never been before. You open up the GPS, it offers you a known set of steps to get driving directions. The first thing it shows you is a dot of your current location. You click the button to get directions, and it asks you where you want to go. Then you hit navigate, and it shares step by step instructions on where you want to go. The GPS gives you three critical things: where you are, where you want to go, and the steps along the way. That just sounded completely like elementary school. Okay, great. But then I read this next paragraph. Now imagine a different experience with your friendly GPS app. You open it and it asks you how you're doing and then waits for your response. Instead of having you choose a destination, it just starts telling you to turn left and then right and then drive straight. You ask the app where it's taking you and it says, "Where do you want to go?" But where is that? And how does it think it knows? And then basically the analogy here is that unfortunately, that's how way too many coaching conversations go. That coaches are so big on, I want my clients to leave feeling better with some sort of an insight, that a big aha, that they really start coaching without establishing where they're headed or why. And I have to say, as a coach, I have been guilty of this before, where I've been like, oh, well, talking about where you are and where you want to be, that's boring, right? Like, that's not like where I get to use all my fancy, like, insight and technique and all that. But I do think some coaching conversations go like that. I think some of my coaching conversations go like that. And I just really was like reminded that it has to be grounded in, okay, where are we and where do we want to go? Anybody have any other thoughts there or anything around that part, Rex?
Yeah, I mean that is powerful. We've been using it in our goal setting process for 50 years, but he talks later on about how coachees will will try to wiggle off the hook, if you will, and take you down all sorts of paths. He doesn't say it exactly like that to avoid where do you stand now, where do you want to go, and how are you going to get there.
Hmm. And well, and he talks about one of the things I thought was cool was he also talks about an inherent tension between where we are and where we want to be. This idea that you're always, as you kind of when you kind of take a step and you're going, okay, where am I going? Wait, where was I? That there is always kind of a checking back between the two and kind of a toggling between the two, and that somehow there has to kind of remain a certain amount of tension between the where we are and where we want to be, because if there gets to be too much slack, then we have to kind of start over again and remind ourselves of what those are. I thought that was kind of fascinating.
Are you familiar with Paul J. Meyer and SMI, Success Motivation Institute?
No.
They had what he called an SMI dart, and it was like a big arrow that would pierce through. And he said most people can get 90% what they want out of life. What they got to do is break through the success barrier and get all of the things on the other side of that barrier. Uh, and I've used that analogy for years. That that we, particularly living in America, we can we can accomplish a lot with very little effort. But if you really want the audacious, big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, you've got to break through those hindering circumstances and excuses.
Very good. Love it. Love it. So the next thing he talks about here, love what you just said, is he talks about what game we're playing. And since you're on the physical book, it's kind of right here, um, just kind of page 15 and 14 and 15. There's kind of a shaded area, and I like the idea of things being a game. I work in the world of training, and we do a lot with gamification of learning and the idea of kind of bringing the elements of play into learning, into coaching. And so sometimes I do find that it's nice to maybe frame like a coaching conversation as a game. Like, well, let's play a game. Let's imagine one of the games I play, for example, is let's imagine you've already achieved it. How did you achieve it? And have them kind of backward engineer, how they got somewhere. or if they have a particular barrier that just keeps tripping them up, like we don't have the budget for that. I'm like, okay, let's play a game. Let's imagine that you have unlimited budget and you can do anything you want. What would you do, right? So I do that a lot, like suspend reality and say, well, let's just kind of play this game. And so that's kind of, I related what he said here, that the game of coaching is a game of growth. It's a game of discovery. It's a game of moving closer to yourself and your service. And then he starts listing all the things you get to do in this game. You get to challenge everything you believe to be true about yourself and others and about the world. You get to be wrong and to choose how to relate to that. You get to choose your worth and worthiness. You get to face your demons, your stories, your all the different parts of yourselves, your shadows. You get to let go of all of these or keep them. So I just thought in this section, it might be kind of fun to ask you. You get to be triggered. You get to choose how big you dream. You get to choose your companions. You get to choose what success is. You get to choose if anything is a measure of your life, how to spend your days, weeks, months, and years. You get to choose how much of your love, power, brilliance, wisdom, creativity, joy, and passion you show to the world. You get to choose how much of that you let in from the world. You get to choose what you stand for and what you value. You get to choose what you're a yes to and what you're a no to. You get to choose how you respond to the world's response. You get to choose to grow, to push. You get to choose to be courageous. You get to cheat as much as you want. You get to choose what counts as cheating and how to treat people who cheat. You get to win, you get to lose, and you get to choose the definitions of those as well. You get to choose all those choices and more. And most importantly, you get to kind of remember that you get to create who you are and where you are. Now, he does at this point kind of say that he uses this idea of a spiritual journey, of God and of love as just meaning whatever our definition of divine is. But he's not afraid to say that these types of interactions with people are rather divine. So I guess that's where I wanted to open up again. Like, as you think about coaching your career, what your life, what game are you playing and what do you get to do? Did that spark any thoughts for anybody?
Well, I think we're kind of an open, we're kind of like this journal, there's nothing on the page, and we get to create and develop whatever we want to develop in our life. I think back about my mother-in-law. She used the word "I'm afraid" all the time. I mean, it was part of her conversation. Well, I'm afraid, da 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 da. Well, I'm afraid of this. I mean, and that was her language all the time. And it just irritates the crap out of me. She kind of irritated the crap out of me too. So, but anyway, but you get to write whatever you want to. But we bring all of our experiences, our successes, our failures, all of that together, and we get to decide what what life we're going to live. She lived in a life of fear just by her conversation. You know, so it's like a blank page. You get to write whatever you want to on that and do. I mean, people that say, well, I can't go to school. I'm too old. I can't do this because of this. And you limit yourself. And um, and I guess I've experienced a lot of that since Wally passed 3.5 years ago. Everybody says, why don't you get rid of that house, move into a senior citizen complex? And, they have all these activities. And I said, hell no, I don't want to be around a bunch of old people. All they do is complain about their illnesses and what surgeries they had last week. I tried to move back to Denton where we grew up in college. We lived there 17 years. Uh, just to be around young people. I don't want old people. I mean, all my friends. I mean, Rex and I are pretty close to the same age, and you know,
Oh, You're a lot younger than I am, Peggy.
Well, but I'm still older than Sherry by a whole hell of a lot. Yes,
I'm
but
I'm
you
pretty
get the
close.
same thing, don't you? People say, "Well, why don't y'all, get rid of your house and pare down and yada yada yada." I don't want to pare down. I want to keep going. That's what keeps me going.
One of
So
my
absolutely, it's interesting to me. Hi, Sandy. I'm glad you're joining
Hi.
us.
I'm
Um,
gonna have, yeah. If
oh,
it
go
gets
ahead. I'm
loud
just
on my side, let me know. Sorry.
okay. No, it sounds good. It's interesting to me that you noticed that about what was she, your stepmom, that she was saying that she was afraid all the time?
Mother-in-law,
Mother-in-law. How long? I
mother-in-law.
mean, yeah. So it's interesting that you even noticed that because I think that when you said that about like moving into a place where a lot of people have the old mentality, it's like the water they swim in, and pretty soon you start to believe that's reality, right?
Yeah,
All those things that you're afraid of, it's not like that you don't see that you have a choice. You just see that these are things that you have that you can't do because you're afraid, or oh, I'm old, so I can't do this because I'm old, or gosh, I'm old, so I should be sick, even though there's no reason in the world to explain any of
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely. I was telling a friend, and she's actually a little bit younger than me. Uh, oh, I don't know, a year or so ago, I said something about I have wanted for a while to get my MBA. Do I need it? Do I have to have it? No, but I want to do it. And I found out in the state of Texas, if you're over 65, you can go to any public college tuition free. Um, you know, And I mean, the next day I got on the phone, called North Texas, and to verify that. And sure enough, you can only take 6 hours a semester, but my gosh, a master's degree, that's all you want to take anyway on a master's degree.
I got
And
my
she,
MBA at UTA just in case you wanted to go there.
yeah, well, I mean, any public college in the state of Texas, you can go 6 hours at a pop, and that's only a year and a half for an MBA, you know.
Oh,
And she said, "Well, why would you want to do that?" And I'm going, "Because I can."
yeah.
And it was the furthest thing from her mind. Well, that's fine and good, but it wasn't. It was right in the front of mine.
Cool.
That's a big, hairy, audacious goal, Peggy.
It is.
That is a pretty big, hairy, ambitious goal. And I filled out the paperwork about 3 or 4 times when Wally was still alive. And every time something happened that I couldn't follow through with it, all I needed to do was pay the entrance fee of $75 to get into school. I mean, I've got everything ready to go.
Cool.
So
Love it.
are you going for that then? Are we going to hold you accountable to it or?
Now, don't hold me accountable because I may change my mind the time I get
Which
off the
is
phone.
which you can,
Because
right? I mean, that was the whole point.
yeah, because I
Yeah.
can, but I do a lot of other stuff. I mean, I learn everything I possibly can about LinkedIn and the things that
Yeah,
I'm doing there. I take every kind of class I can get my hands on. So,
yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
I was
Cindy,
never
any
this
thoughts?
much of a
Oh,
I wasn't this much of a learner whenever I was in college, at all. I've gotten more so in my older years, maybe because I have nothing else to do but play with a cat. So.
Great.
anybody else thoughts on this idea of, I think Peggy started it off with like, it's your journal. This idea that we are creating later, the author talks about creating a container for the person to be able to create inside of. But what
Yeah,
game are you playing? What do you get to
yeah.
do in the game that you're playing? Anybody else have any thoughts?
Well, I'll say that I think that I always, when I refer to what I do now, I say I get to, and that I feel very thankful that I get to. And so even though I'm not like as in charge or like again marketing my own thing and blah blah blah, I I love what I get to do, and thankfully I am somebody who always has loved what I get to do. I haven't always loved the financial outcome of what I've done, but I definitely feel very fortunate. And I mean, it is an interesting thing about that big, hairy, audacious goal. It's like, I don't know, that the whole thing, I like that you said this year about like kind of relooking or reminding or like, it's like each time it's like the point that I'm at now is so different than I was even 5 years ago or whatever, that it's like to have to reevaluate, what am I really going for that I want that will that will, that I'll actually realize. So yeah.
Well, what you and Peggy just said made me think of something is that society often thinks that a big, hairy, audacious goal should be like in one direction, like this
Hmm.
idea of my starting point and my ending point. Like you don't just use your GPS and drive somewhere and be done with it, right? You use the GPS and go all kinds of places, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
Rex's, BHAG is more in a particular direction, although I'm sure he's had a lot of other things along the way. But what if, your journey is I'm at a locus in the middle and I'm going to go out here and then come back and to point and go back out here. And when you're done, it looks like the spokes on a wheel. And that was your goal, right? Was to build
Hmm.
yourself in a rounded way, as
Mm.
opposed to in kind of in the distance that you went in one direction,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I love, the idea too that I think that in part with what everything all of us are like kind of looking at it. And again, this moment in time is so different than whatever other because there are different resources. There are different pieces that are both stopped or like can be challenges as well as perhaps adjunct. Like I'll bring up the whole chat GPT story
I
with
thought I
yeah,
thought AI the minute you started saying what you were saying, I
yes.
thought AI. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really I haven't like utilized it, but I remember that when we did that one exercise, whenever that marketing summit was, and it was like, oh my gosh, I have no excuse. You know what I mean? Like all of the so many things are there. The rest of the part is actually the human part. And, I have to believe that with training that it's going to be still valuable in the future, that human part that we bring. Because I was talking to actually just to put this in here for this, somebody who's a coach the other day, and she was like, she's very concerned that AI, like some of the companies she does work with, they're having like coaches do maybe one, but then after that, they're all doing like ChatGPT AI coaching sessions.
Mhm.
So,
So one of my favorite coaches, I go to all of his things. His last name's Hagen, Chris Hagen, I think. I've met him at ATD and these events, and he actually put on a little free workshop a few months ago, and he talked about how he uses AI right there in his coaching. He meets with his
uh-huh,
clients, they set goals, he sets up things with an AI, they interact with the AI in between, they turn in their things into the AI, and the AI kind of looks over what's going on. He kind of
uh-huh,
oversees the process. He meets with them in person less often. He says it's a beautiful thing and it's a way he's scaling his business.
uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah. Is it you who are here that does somebody last time talked about that they were doing a newsletter for someone about something. Actually, Peggy, was that you that was doing
It
something using
was.
AI?
Well, yeah, I've had a client the last 2 years that I write for on LinkedIn
Yeah,
twice a week.
yeah,
Yeah. He's
impressive.
in the automobile dealership software industry. I know nothing about that, but I
Yeah.
had taken an AI class, Chat GPT class, about 2 weeks before he called me, and he said, "Do you know anybody that would write blogs for me?" And I'm going, "Why? I do my own," you know.
Hmm.
And so yeah, as a matter of fact, that contract just ended. So I'm looking for, and I had a guy call me today and say, I need to hire you to do some social media for me. So we're meeting in the morning on the phone.
Oh,
So
that's great. Well, good for you. See, that's a definite example of courageous, which I
yeah.
think is part of this book thing too. So, yeah.
So Wanda has joined us, and then Rex, I'd love to hear from you. But it's so funny, Wanda, because in the same shipment that I got the book that we are doing here for book club, I got this book, which is Wanda's book, Seven Steps to Career Success. Congratulations
Awesome.
on that, Wanda.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for getting that book. Wow, what a surprise.
So we're talking about in this book that we're reading on This is Coaching that he kind of talks about how you kind of decide what game are you playing and what do you get to do, in this game as a coach. And Peggy gave us a really cool answer, and Cindy, you checked in. Rex, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about in this section before we move?
That whole section that you read about choice, about choosing, uh,
Yeah, about the game and what you get to do. Yeah.
one of the first personal development classics that I read 50 years ago, probably 40 some years ago, was called Your Greatest Power. And when I do workshops, I ask people, what do you think the author says your greatest power is? I've never had anybody guess it. But he says your greatest power is your power to choose. So I really related to those two pages that this author talked about. You can choose to do all these things. And then I reflected on my son when he didn't like school. He was a good athlete, so he would go to school so he could play sports. But he'd say, I have to go to school. I said, Jeff, you get to go to school. But we can choose to embrace school or struggle against it.
Well, and I would relate that back to what you were saying, Peggy, about how, like, if you have these fears or you have this dogma that someone says, well, you're supposed to go to school and you're supposed to be good, get good grades. Well, what if that's not the game you're playing? What if the game you want to play is to go to school and get passing grades, but like enjoy the sports, right? Like, who says, I know your parents do when you're a kid, right? But as adults, it's like, who says that the game I have to play is the one where I go to school to get good grades and everything, right? Like I
Yeah,
think, if I had a chance to, well, it's funny because in my MBA I got 4.0. So that's that, but that was me choosing. Like it was, but I realize now, like, you can play that game called school, you can play that game called work, you can play that game called the relationship, and you get to kind of decide, like, here's the game I'm playing. And you have to, if it's a relationship, you have to have the conversation with the other person and find out what game they want to play and what kinds of things you need to do to be there for each other in that. But part of it, when I hear what you said about your mother-in-law, the whole societal stuff that they heap onto us, and we believe that that's the game we have to play. I think this is an important thing to think about. What game am I playing, and what do I get to do? Go ahead, Peggy. You were going to say something else?
yeah. My son, he they put him in advanced math classes when he was ninth or 10th grade. He stayed in there about 8 weeks, and he came in. He said, "I don't want to do that anymore. I want to go back to regular class." And I said, "Well, why? Is it too hard?" He goes, "No." And they just gave him more homework because it is an advanced class, and he could have easily aced that, but he was one of those kind of kids that he'd rather play than work, and he just made enough grades to pass. He wasn't willing to work any more than that, you know. And smart as a whip. I mean, he was one of those kind of people who could listen to the hum of your computer and tell you what was wrong with it. I mean, he was a genius at that. But he never had a desire to go to college. Of course, he had two parents that were educated idiots. So, I mean, with Wally having a PhD and and all that. But yeah, he wasn't willing to work hard enough to do any more than maybe C's, just so he didn't have to take something over again. But it wasn't for lack of knowledge or capability. He was very capable of doing that.
And then in the end, like, to combine that with the big, hairy, audacious goal, it's like that works as long as you have something else that you do care about. Like, I'm going to not apply myself in the work because I really enjoy the socializing with my friends. I'm not going to apply myself as hard at school, but I really do love the sports. I think where I see people really kind of in my environment, like really fail, like failing to thrive in life, it's where they don't want to play that game, but they don't have a game of their own that they've decided they do want to play, right? And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like, have that vision, have that thing that you want to do, and then decide the game you're going to play. I think it's no mistake that it talked about that first, and the goal first, and then the deciding what you choose.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree.
All right, thank you, everyone. So then it really goes into kind of a couple of just kind of what coaching is, and I know we talk about that in my coach certification. Rex, if you saw anything in here, feel free. But I think one of the coolest things, or the only thing I really saw in this chapter that I wanted to highlight, or this part of the chapter, is one of his when he was asking people what coaching is. One of the people that he asked said, coaching is helping someone to have the life they want while becoming more of themselves. So it's kind of like, I've said this before in coaching. I feel like a lot of the time people do come into a coaching relationship sort of already having all those things imposed upon them about how they're supposed to think and what their goals are supposed to be. And in the coaching, the idea that we create a game and where you get to do and be all the things. So you do create the goal at the beginning, and when we say it's all about the journey and it's about the process, then we also get to help them kind of uncover, what do you actually think about this? What do you really want? They'll say, well, I've always been like this. Okay, what do you want to be now? So I thought that was kind of this neat idea that, like, what's encapsulated in that is the goal and achieving the goal, but also it being about the journey, which, no surprise, one of the upcoming sections of this chapter is going to be that coaching is a journey. So that's all I had for that chapter on what coaching is, and then the next chapter is what happens in a coaching conversation. Rex, did you have anything else there before we just move forward?
Just quickly, Tom Landry, I think as the Tom Landry quote says, a coach takes someone else to a level they never thought they could get to on their own.
Hmm. That sounds like something he might say.
Yep.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah. So now we look at this idea because in the end, even though we have a lot of tools available to us in coaching, and he does list some of them, and I have a feeling he's going to get more into them as the book continues, but it's this coaching conversation. So the coaching conversation is kind of the basis because we have these times that we meet, right? And so um the author basically says that all kinds of things can happen in a coaching conversation, and that he can't tell you exactly what happens in one. Neither can I. It's always been difficult to teach a coach certification training, because at multiple points in the certification, I have people go, but you still haven't told me how to coach. And I'm like, I really have. I promise you I have. It's just not something that you wrap your mind around, but by having the parameters of what we're talking about right now, sort of who you are and who they are and what the game is that we're playing, and having that GPS analogy of getting a starting point and getting an ending point and letting them check in and decide what direction they want to go as we move forward, that you are learning to be a great coach. And so I'm validated by that with this author, and I loved this. Coaching helps us to create a new world, a new life that was just waiting to be imagined, a more complete version of ourselves. And now he's going to go into the components of a coaching conversation. And he's going to get into four things: empowerment, possibility, enrollment, and commitment. But before I do that, I think that it is, kind of a moment to, first of all, Daryl, I see that you made it. Nice to see you. Um, Anything else on just this idea of what we are creating in a coaching conversation? Did anybody have any other thoughts that were sparked by that? What
Hey
coaching is,
Sherry, I,
what a
I think
coaching conversation is.
I,
Yeah.
I I think one of the things that with coaching, is about empowerment. Um, the clients that I have coached since taking your course is all about empowerment and also accountability. I think that's what do you want to do? Like you just said, that point A to point B. Okay, so when are we going to start, and what are the steps we're going to take to get there?
And then in the process of that journey, the author here says that it's not just that, it's that and the other part that you said, the empowerment part that says,
That's right.
and while you're doing this journey, you get to discover more of what you really like and who you really are and where you really want to be and what your purpose really is, so that you not only move forward and take those steps and achieve the goal, but you achieve a certain level of breadth and beingness that you would that transcends beyond just the journey from the to the goal.
Yes, exactly. And I find it very exhilarating when I see my clients have reached or are reaching their potential, and that lets me know that, hey, what I've learned from you and through different practices and stuff, and that gives me the confidence to keep going on.
He gets into the idea of, like, that coaching is this interplay right between the client and us, and we both grow. So I love hearing that. Very good. Anything else, anybody, before we go into those four things?
Yeah, one of the things, and I think I got this when I took my coach training from you. I was looking at because I created a coaching blueprint,
Uh-huh.
and that coaching is a process. It helps you identify your hidden gifts and talents, and helps you focus and get clear on ascertaining and accomplishing personal goals and objectives. There are no right or wrong goals to accomplish. Did I get that from you?
Not exactly. That definitely is an assimilation from all the different things that you've
Yeah,
learned.
and,
Yeah.
and then and the other part of that is it's they are only better and best.
Nice.
But
I like it.
I got that out of when I took my training from you.
Nice. Thank you. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So these ingredients that our author says um, are a requirement for deep transformation are first of all empowerment. Clients become empowered to create their own lives from their desires and dreams through the inquiry and guidance of a coach. They have the chance to spot the places in their life where they're playing the victim or letting others decide their choices for them. As they choose empowerment in more parts of their lives, things spiral upward and more freedom comes their way. Huge. That's kind of exactly what we've been talking about in terms of like mother-in-law and some of the ways that that people feel trapped. And it's like in that coaching conversation, it's kind of the first time that they sometimes are able to get in touch with what they want. Anybody want to add anything on this empowerment piece before we look at the other three? Because they kind of build on each other. So I'll go ahead and go into all four and then, yeah. Possibility. As clients choose to create something new in life, possibility emerges. It's the idea that something else might be available, something outside the scope of their current life or worldview, something that felt out of their reach until now. With possibility comes fear. Fear that this might not work, fear of losing the thing they imagined before even getting it, fear of losing what they have now as they grow. Possibility and fear are traveling companions on this journey, which leads to enrollment, which is to realize this new possibility, new beliefs and actions are likely required when clients are enrolled in the positive benefits of what they want and their own power to create it. They're more likely to shift those actions. They have to be at least open to believing in themselves in order to transform. And I hear you. I'm just going to do the last one. Uh, Commitment is where the rubber meets the road. It's coming from the place in which their vision is already true and acting accordingly. It's returning to empowerment, possibility, and enrollment over and over again on the way up the mountain. So then so I like this whole because empowerment was so like inspiring, and then possibility was so inspiring, and we could just have stopped there and been just like, oh, look, rainbows and lollipops, right? But then, like, the reality is, and the reason they need a coach is that with this possibility comes all the fear and all the fear, all the changes, right? All the pushback from all the people that are invested in them staying the same. And that's where, as we coach them, we're enrolling them in this like opting into what direction they want to go, how much possibility they want to get. And we're getting, like you said, Daryl, when you said accountability, we're getting that commitment from them. And it's this constant checking back in with the empowerment part, who you are and what you want, and then checking in with the possibility and the goal and the direction you want to go. But then the fear comes. So then there has to be enrollment and commitment to get past the fear to move to the next step. And it's this cycle is kind of the way I see what he's talking about here. So now I'll be quiet and let some of you have your thoughts on those. And I've got to be honest, that word enrollment is one of the things that made me think that this man was a Landmark graduate, because in Landmark Education, the Landmark Forum, they talk about enrollment, that if you want to bring other people along with you in their journey, you have to enroll them. And enrolling them is that you sort of help them understand, kind of meet them where they are, and help them see the possibilities that you that you see and invite them to participate in the journey that you're on.
I want to just chime in just right now.
Please.
I also heard that in Word and Roll, and I did Landmark, and it sounds like you have as well. And I didn't like that Word and Roll, so it kind of was like a little bit of a like negative connotation, if you will. I mean, I get the whole essence of it, and I get the intention behind it, but it's interesting, like how different words can take on different associations. And I don't know. That's all. I'll just say that.
No, I said at the
The rest of
beginning, you
it's
weren't
great,
here
though.
yet, that I feel like
Oh,
there are lots of these things that feel like he's been through landmark training, like the some of the
oh,
verbiage
okay.
that he uses. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And
I mean, it's
enrollment
a
was
good
the big
thing.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thanks.
So what I like is that it's almost like the previous conversation that we had where it was like, okay, you've got your where you are now, you've got your where you want to be, those are your, and you see your possibilities that lead you there. You've got your empowerment. That's the part where you discover more about yourself and what you want and who you are. That's the breadth of where you go. And then those last two, the idea of enrollment and commitment, that's kind of where the coach is kind of required. The coach has to create that container. The coach gets to suspend the rules and get to play the game and create a place where possibilities are possible. But it's also then like the last two pieces, in my opinion, are kind of preparing them for the real world, right? Because inside the coaching conversation, we've got this nice environment, this nice container. And then outside the real world is going to happen, be that external factors or just that internal dialogue that's going to be coming into play and kind of being able to replicate some of the things that we want and that we are able to talk about it and envision in a coaching conversation in the real world. Like that's where the challenge is, I felt like. Anybody have any other thoughts there? So I let everybody know at the beginning that I am going to keep these right at 1 hour. So I think we're doing great. I think the timing is good, and I appreciate everyone so much in your conversations and thoughts. So then it lists a bunch of tools, and I have a feeling he's going to go more into these tools as we move forward. So I'm not going to belabor them right now. If he doesn't, I promise to come back and pick them up. Um, but generally, I feel like that's kind of where we are there. And then he kind of goes into this list. In fact, the little handout that I created for this class, for this session, um, I looked at all these things he said coaching is. He says it's a journey, it's a spiritual practice, it's a full contact sport. So, from the journey part, the part that I thought was interesting was that it's a process of discovery of what works and what doesn't, of what's helpful and what isn't, of what's real and what is imagined. I think about people I've coached and people who have coached me and how, sometimes the coach would try a thing and it was like, well, that's not working, and I'd be like, you know what, let's abandon that line of questioning. Let's go over here, right? And I've done the same thing in the middle of my coaching. I'd be like, you know what? I don't know how I don't know if this is really working in this thing. Maybe we should go over here. I think it's an important thing for all of us to be kind of willing to do, is to not just discover what works, but discover the things that aren't working. Because there is no right way and you don't get to know what happens. So in those ways, coaching is like a journey. Anybody have any other comments before I do the other two? So Matt Thieleman, the author, says that coaching is a spiritual practice. And it's this idea, and this is where, and again, might be similar to some of the things that Landmark says. This is an analogy that I've definitely heard multiple times. And again, we're reading someone's book, so I'm not trying to enroll anybody in a belief. But in this section, when he talks about that it's a spiritual practice, whether you believe this to be true, whether you are willing to just hear it as an analogy or something else, it doesn't matter. But this analogy that says, imagine that we are all ascended masters that are powerful and limitless, that we're just a creator who's a part of God, but we agreed to forget that, and we signed an agreement to incarnate on the planet, and that we're here to rediscover our divinity. So again, not whether you believe that or not, but it probably is something you've heard before. This is where he kind of outlines that. So then he basically goes into, so when your clients or you show up and play small, don't ask for what we want. Complain about things that are in our control. Play the victim of circumstance. Avoid the practices we've committed to, or any number of things to sabotage ourselves. Then the idea is, again, however you feel about this analogy or this game that he just set up here, then if as a coach we treat it like they just don't see the possibility of who they are in the same way that you do. And I've always said, as a coach, I want to be able to see them as their possibility. Um, and so that's sort of where he goes with this. Um, when you invite clients to consider what they want, you're speaking to their divine creativity and desire. When you choose to be a stand for, another landmark phrase, be a stand for them having the thing they want, you're relating to their divine power. When you lovingly challenge their old patterns, you're calling forth their divine wisdom, love, and grace. When you hold a space for their emotions and breakdowns, you're giving love to their divine child and wounding. As you see them in this way, their divinity rather than their fears, you're creating room to heal. You're dispelling the human fog that tells them they're separate. You're showing them their own sort of oneness. In doing so, you heal yourself. You see through your own fog. So that's kind of his piece on coaching as a spiritual practice. Anybody have anything that you want to add, share there?
Something that
I
I
would, share. I would say I definitely agree that coaching is definitely a spiritual practice. One of the things I do, I teach Sunday school in my church, and one of the persons in the Bible who I love to talk about when you look at coaching and leadership is Moses.
Um,
Moses, went against all odds, and I'm not trying to preach here or trying to advance any religion, but from a historical perspective, I mean, he had to coach people, he had to lead people, he was up against adversity, you know, he did what he was supposed to do. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. And you can learn a lot. And there's spiritualness. So I definitely agree with that. There's a spiritualness to coaching.
Cool. Love it. Rex, what were you going to say?
no, that's okay.
Cindy, what were
I,
you going to
I
say?
definitely
Oh,
agree with
Wanda, go
that.
ahead.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And even in my coaching, when I ask them about their leadership or their
Hi,
leadership
Cody.
abilities, they definitely bring in the spiritual part of it. And they will talk about leaders. They will mention Jesus, and they will definitely mention Moses and Paul. And so it's amazing how I think it's definitely spiritual coaching for sure.
I'll just second or third or fourth that or whatever. I agree, and I think it is. I love that he is actually including this part. I think that can be bold in some of the ways things are today. So that's kudos to him on that.
Cool. Cool. And then coaching is a full contact sport, supporting clients in getting somewhere they've never been before, supporting them in shifting everything standing in their way, everything that's standing in our way of helping them, living the life of a coach, leader, and transformational being, seeing what's possible, loving what is along the way. He says it's the most beautiful job in the world. So the final thing that I wanted to get to, and we did timing wise, thank you everyone, was this section here where it says you are a guest house. this is fascinating, and this is kind of the thing I'd love for you to kind of think about between now and book club next week. And let me tell you, my the method to my madness in scheduling book club is I looked at my calendar. The only day of the week that I don't typically have something that else that's going on is Mondays. And I looked at all the Mondays that I didn't have anything else going on. And I said, oh, I'll do book club on those days. So I'll record it. It's okay if you can't come to all of them. I think that all of us are seeing that it's really fun to just kind of be here for that hour and just kind of focus and think whether it's not, you don't have to come on a regular basis. I find it just kind of cool to stop and think and talk for a minute. But as it is here in April, I am available this week and next week and the week after. So I am going to do this next week, April 28th at 6 p.m. Central, and then May 5th at 6 p.m. Central. And then the next 3 weeks are a wash. And then I'll start back up again the first week of June. So I will send out like a longer schedule. So between now and next week, what I wanted us to look at was this idea of you are a guest house. So this kind of moved me. You can rest assured that your client's survival mechanisms, resistance, ego habits, and self-sabotaging patterns are going to come out. They're doing what they do, trying to keep themselves in the safety of their known bubble. And if you're doing it right, your same patterns are going to come out too, because you will be working with clients who challenge you to show up at your best. If you're a people pleaser, your client will question your love for them. If you're a perfectionist, your client will point out the missteps in your process. If you're triggered by anger, your client will unleash a rageful storm on you. If your client's breakthrough is to stop thinking so much, you'll start thinking about how much they're thinking. If your client is creating a money breakthrough, your money patterns will hit full force. Your job is to remain in the fray, holding boundaries, of course, no matter what your client brings, holding the door open to what else is possible for them. And your job is to spot your own patterns as they emerge. Uh, Continuing to work on your own to integrate them. Welcome and entertain them all. They are guides from beyond, appearing to accompany you and your client along the path. So I remember finding this to be the case, like when I was out doing contract training, then I know on the week that I was teaching dealing with difficult people, no matter what, that week, like difficult people showed up everywhere. And when I was teaching time management, then I just remember being challenged by efficiency problems. It was just hilarious how it would manifest like that. So that's what I would like to kind of throw at you guys for kind of a homework, is that in this next section, there's a series of questions that it asks, kind of along these lines. I do have those questions right here in the handout, right here for you to kind of think about. Go ahead. You were going to say something. I wanted to say that real quick before. Go ahead.
Who are you talking to?
Oh, I thought I
Yeah.
heard somebody speaking up. So I
Mhm.
listen. Okay.
I have something that I found very helpful in
Yeah.
coaching is, and it ties into that first paragraph that you read, where people are self-sabotaging themselves with doubt, worry, indecision, what have you, is that early in the coaching process, I teach them a model that we see or hear things, then we tell ourselves a story, and then our emotions kick in, either positive or negative, and then we act based on those emotions, and we get results accordingly. And so when they buy into that model, when they start selling self-sabotaging things, I said, Sherry, what story are you telling yourself? I said, you may want to change your story.
Perfect. Yep. It is a story, right? So that's what I want to invite you to do. Attached to both the email invitation and here in the chat is the little handout with the questions. And I would invite you to kind of ask yourself, when you are a guest house, what kinds of your own patterns might get triggered? Like the more aware we are of those, right? The more aware we are of our own stories. And then take a look at those questions that he poses in the next section. And Rex, based on what you just said, one of the big ones is like,
Mm.
What part of their path am I assuming will be hard? Where am I inventing pitfalls that aren't there? What do I want them to change? What parts of them am I not accepting right now? What parts of them do I admire or pretend I don't have? Where am I putting them or myself on a pedestal? Like it's really asking a lot of questions to like alleviate your stories. Go ahead.
Yeah. The flip side of my model is that we got to be careful as coaches that we don't tell ourselves a erroneous story that isn't true. Uh, and a good book I'd recommend to anybody on this call is Don't Believe Everything You're Thinking. It is a terrific read. Have you read it, Sherry?
No, love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for just popping in. It's a nice short hour, but it feels like a lot can happen in an hour, and we're all just kind of together and talking and concentrating. So I appreciate you so much. Again, both next week and the week after, April 28th and May 5th, I will be here at 6 Central if you'd like to join. Thank you again.
All right. Great.
Thank you.
Uh-huh, thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Wanda. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you. Take
Ah,
care,
thank
Sherry.
you. You too.